Okay, good morning, everybody. Welcome to Breckland Planning for today, February the 14th. So I hope you're all feeling loved up. No? Okay, that's fine. Just needed to cover that one off. First of all, let me go through what we class as our general housekeeping. Fire exits, these two doors here quite clearly marked. There's one at the end of the corridor where the lavatories are, and of course the door where you came in. I have got no tests booked down for today, so if the alarm does go off, we will treat it as genuine and we will exit the building. And we will congregate in the car park. If you're not sure what the procedure for that is, just follow any of this lot if you can keep up with them, because they're very quick and they don't want to burn, I hope. Next item, phones and mobile devices. Could I ask that your phones or mobile devices are switched to silent or switched off, whichever? If you do decide that it's more important that you continue your business and disturb my meeting, I am in a position to fine you £10, which goes to the chairman's charity. Now, that's not me as the chairman of this committee, it's the chairman of the council and his chosen charities. And it takes me all the year of the chairman to know what they are, but I know one of them is the
Chairman, the three dads walking, which is to prevent or to help families who have bereavement to suicide. We've seen that on the national television. And then Mind is the mental health charity.
Yes, and Councillor Wilkinson is my vice chairman on planning and also vice chairman to the chairman of the council. So he's got two hats and a big wardrobe to keep them in. Okay, so next item is procedure. What we will do is each item is read. I have a list of people who have registered to speak. You'll come and sit on the right-hand side. There's various titles to help you, assist you where to sit. Sit wherever you want, really, and they're not important. The officer will give the presentation. I've got a list of your timings and your allowance to speak. When your time is up, you will hear the bell. It's rather loud. That just means, can you sum up? All right, I'm not asking you to stop speaking because you might be in the middle of an important sentence, but summing up does not take 15 minutes. That means come to an end of a nice sentence, finish off. If you decide that you want to keep, well, rabbiting on, for a bit of a want of word, because you've gone over your time limit, I have control here that I can shut off any microphone in this room. So I will press that and you'll be talking to yourself, because I will then be very loud and talk over you. There you go. That's it. That's how I am. Introduction of my team for today. On my left-hand side, I have Mike Horn, who's solicitor to the council. On his left-hand side is Simon Wood, who's the head of this, that, and the other, and he's got a lovely big title. Yeah, Director of Planning and Building Control and everything else and what have you. On my right-hand side is my right-hand person in this day and age, and that's Rebecca Collins, who makes me look really good and does everything for me. So I just turn up and switch the microphone on. We also have, I'm gonna put him at the back because he was first on my list, but I'm not going to do it that way. I'm going to start at the far end. And because we've got cameras, I'm going to make them stand up when their name's called. I've got Lucy Gaffer, who's one of our planners for today. Stand up, Lucy, so they can see you. I don't think the members have seen much of Lucy. Right, hi, sit down. And then we've got Gemma Manthorpe, who's got a case on for today. Gemma, thank you. And then Matthew, you didn't stay, Matthew, we know you. No, stand up, stand up. Stand up, because they need to see you on the camera. Thank you, there we go, thank you. Also, we have Julie Britton here, who's from Democratic Services, who keeps us all in order and takes the minutes, etc., etc. And of course, Mandy Cunnington, who is our usher for today, who's escorted you into the building, show you where to sit and told you to be quiet. So she's very good at that. Okay, that's the general housekeeping done. We can start with the agenda for today. Item 1 is minutes, and that's to confirm the minutes of the meeting held on the 26th of January 2023. Do I have agreement from you that I can sign those minutes? Are you in agreement with the minutes? Thank you very much. Julie. Okay, that's paperwork done. We don't do paper, but we have that there. Item 2, apologies and substitutes. Julie, please.
Thank you, Chairman. I have apologies from Councillor Bowes and Councillor Martin, and Councillor Taylor is in attendance as Councillor Martin's substitute.
Good. Thank you, Councillor Taylor. Thank you, Councillor Taylor, for coming in. I know you've got a very busy schedule and various other commitments, but thank you. Item 3, we've got declaration of interest and representations received. I will take them as each item is raised, so keep your powder dry. Item 4, chairman's announcements. I'm not going to tell you how many shopping days or sleeps it is to Christmas, not yet. No, I'm not going to. That'll be for another meeting. But what I will say to you is I'd like to say thank you to all the members who turned up on the site visit yesterday. It was very well attended, and I think you'll all agree it was very informative and looks so different from photos, papers and various things to actually be there and tread through the field. And I will wear better footwear another time. They had small heels, they weren't designer heels, they were just heels. Cuban, yes, more like a Cuban heel, thank you. So item 5, request to defer applications. Do we have any at all? Oh, there's a shake of the head for the cameras. So item 6, urgent business. No urgent business. So we hand over to Simon Wood for item 7, which is the local plan update.
Thank you, Chairman. Quite brief today. The first thing is that the housing and economic needs assessment is out for tender. That is a piece of work that will help us to understand the housing requirements for the district, particularly in relation to specialist groups such as affordable housing, extra care units, etc. And that piece of work in terms of the tender is expected to be completed by the middle of March, and then the work will take place over the following 2 or 3 months, and we will be coming back to members to present the findings of the consultants' work on that and to discuss that with members. The only other thing is that to remind members that the National Planning Policy Framework consultation is still live. The closing date is the 2nd of March. I would encourage members to either email any comments they've got to the planning policy inbox or to make their own representations on the DLUC website. If they need any clarification, if they get in touch with myself or Andy Darcy, then we can help with that. We would ask for any comments to be given to us by the 17th, which is Friday this week, so that we can pull everything together in advance of the 2nd of March deadline, Chairman. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Any questions at all? Councillor Attawell and then Councillor Kittle-Morris.
Yeah, thanks for that update. I believe you're looking to recruit a community kind of liaison officer for planning, specifically for the local plan. Could you just give us an update on where we are with that? Is that person in post yet? And just a little bit about what exactly they're going to do, please.
We're looking to engage with a consultancy who can support us in community engagement. And that exercise has been out to tender, and we have 5 responses from there, which we are in the process of shortlisting, and we hope to appoint in the next week or so. Once we've appointed them, their first piece of work will be in relation to the issues and options consultation. We expect them to support us in identifying groups within the community that are generally not part of the local plan process. We want to be able to get out to youth groups and smaller elements of the community. We want to look at different ways that we can engage. We also want to look at their support in putting things into plain English, because I do realise that planning is jargon heavy, and it's very difficult for us to move away from that, and to lead on some of the presentations, some of the work that we're going to be doing with the wider community. That would include parish groups, but also wider community groups as well. So we hope to have them in place, as I say, in the next week or so, and they will help us lead on the issues and options initially.
Councillor Kittle Morris, please.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. Nutrient neutrality, I see there was something in the press, Simon, that 4 sites have been identified for wetland projects to alleviate the effects of nutrients from building projects, 3 of which are in Breckland, 1 in Colkirk, 1 in Beatley and the other 1 in Dereham. Do we have any update on how that's come about?
Yes, we do. So Natural England are undergoing a process that has involved them identifying sites within Norfolk that would, on the face of it, be suitable to provide mitigation for nutrient neutrality. And they're now in the process of going out to the market for consultants to help do feasibility work on those sites. You're quite right in saying that 3 of those sites are in Breckland. The one that we're more closely involved with, and members will be aware of this, is the Wendling Beck Environmental Project. And associated with that is land that the council owns around Scarning, going up towards Wendling. And so that's being treated as a single site. The Breckland land is not by itself suitable for wetland development. It's too small, basically, but it can provide other quick wins, such as riparian buffers that will help deal with nutrient neutrality as well. So this is at a relatively early stage. What I would say is that wetlands are a solution that will take some time to come forward, but the way that Natural England are looking to do it is to essentially provide credits on a 3-stage basis, with the first stage being, okay, we will give you a note saying that we are able to provide credits, and then as the land becomes available, you move to the second stage, and as the land becomes developed and occupations of properties are able to take place, you enter that 3rd stage effectively, and that will be sort of over an 18-month period. What we want to be able to do, and we're working closely with Natural England on this, as are the other Norfolk authorities, both through the joint venture and individually, is to be able to say to developers, whilst you can't have direct mitigation at this moment in time, we anticipate that mitigation will be available in 18 months. We can deal with your planning applications now, and you will know essentially what that time frame is for your build programs to enable you to start planning when your properties will be available for occupation. Now, that's going to take a little while to get organized. This feasibility work has to be done first, because the key thing about nutrient neutrality is that it has to be relatively local to the development. It has to be capable of being done in perpetuity, and Natural England are looking at 80 to 120 years. So there's recent case of the 40 years might be acceptable, but different debate. And it has to be done before any properties can be occupied. So yes, the work is good news for us. It shows progress being made, but we're not at the end of the tunnel just yet.
Councillor Daigan, please.
On the nutrient neutrality, all these planning applications have been sort of piled up. Do you actually have a easy access list of what actually is in the pile? Because people do ask about planning applications, and I'm thinking, has that gone through, or was that on the nutrient neutrality? I know it's, I know I could go back and see, but is there an easy sort of list anywhere, or do we just have to go into the system and look at individual ones? Because now we've got, I imagine, in the hundreds, if not getting on for 1,000, I should imagine, ones sort of stacked up somewhere.
Yeah, I think the number of houses is probably close to 1,000 units now that are affected by nutrient neutrality. It's very difficult for our back office system to run a report just identifying those applications which are held up. So we're having to do it manually. We do have a schedule of applications that are affected. I was looking to my right there, but we do have schedules of applications that are affected. We are updating it regularly, and I think we're going through that process at the moment just to bring it up to date, just to help inform the Natural England work and also to inform some of the work that we're doing with the joint venture as well. And just in terms of the Norfolk Environmental Credits joint venture, which is a joint venture between some of the Norfolk districts and Anglia Water. We will be taking a report hopefully to Cabinet in March in respect of Breckland's potential involvement in that. So just a heads up in relation to that. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. Also, if you did have any individual item that you needed some sort of response, you could always email the case officer and ask for an update. I know they're busy, but they will always drop you a line and keep you up to date as much as they can.
Yes, I'm aware. I just wondered whether there was anything that needs to go through it, but no.
No.
I do accept
Okay.
it.
Thank you. Councillor Attwell.
Just to say, I'm a bit gobsmacked that they're only now starting this work when they sent us a letter, 10, 11 months ago, putting everything on hold. In terms of the potential hit to the 5-year housing land supply, has the government offered any flexibility in that regard at the moment? Bearing in mind, I presume we'll be producing a report very soon in the spring.
Yeah, it's an interesting question. In direct response to your answer, the government have not offered any advice in respect to 5-year housing land supply, and no, we're not allowed to have any reliance to that. And I am aware of appeals where the inspector's taken the view that it's just one of those things, and nutrient neutrality there, you don't have a 5-year housing land supply. Tough. What is helpful for Breckland is that our main housing delivery areas, Thetford, Attleborough, Swaffham to a degree, are not affected by nutrient neutrality. So we're still able to deliver housing. When you look at Norwich and South Norfolk and much of Broadland, that they are much more washed over by this. And I know South Norfolk have recalculated and have made the decision that they don't have a 5-year housing land supply. We have chosen not to recalculate. As you rightly say, we're going to be in the process in early April of doing our monitoring exercise, and we will have to have regard to that. Our view at the moment is that in relation to the catchment, that all we are probably doing is just pushing delivery back rather than taking it out of that 5-year cycle. Time will tell whether we're being overly optimistic or not, but that's our approach at the moment.
Thank you. Any further questions? No. Okay. Thanks very much, Simon. Thank you for all that. Okay, item 8 is deferred applications, which we will just put down the agenda slightly because I want to go to the main schedule. And I'm going to start with item 9A, 3PL 2022-1215/F, and that's at Great Dunham. And our speakers, if you'd like to come and take a seat, there are 10 of you and there are 10 chairs. So we're going to start the music and take a chair away if you're not careful. So we've got Brenda Upton, Simon Fowler, John Butterfield, Chris Rideout, Daniel Duthie, Craig Rogers, Matt Lomax, Ed Perrin, Charles Mildcreast, and Rob Booth. Like I say, don't take the notice of the titles. Just find yourself a seat. Oh, there's 2 seats at the end for that lady. Oh, you're going to have a title, are you? Well, how did I count wrong? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Oh, someone's missing. Do we know who's, sorry? Oh, Ed Perrin. Okay. Got Mr. Lomax here. Yep, it's all done here then when we go. Right, okay, hang on. I'm going to hand it over to Gemma Manthorpe, who's the case officer, who will give you the presentation.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Okay, this is an application for the construction and operation of a solar voltaic farm, so a PV farm, with battery storage and associated infrastructure, including inverters, substations, security cameras. Thank you. Just checking. Can you actually hear? Can everyone hear me okay? Thank you. Security cameras, fencing, access tracks, and landscaping. This is the location plan for the site. Members will see this as a large site, including the cabling route, which is approximately 8 kilometres long. The site is 103.6 hectares in total size, with 94.4 hectares taken up by the actual central point that you'll be able to see on there, outlined in red of the actual solar farm. Yesterday, members received an objection which has been available since November from the CPRE, the Campaign to Protect Rural England. So you received that and have been able to read through that. That was in addition, just to absolutely clarify that objection, and also an article submitted by Great Dunham Parish Council, who will be speaking in opposition of the application. It's important to note that the article submitted is a generic article, which is not site specific to Breckland. It's not site specific to this application. And the information will be referenced by Great Dunham Parish Council. The reason it was sent round to members is because actually reading it from a screen of 22 pages was not practical. So you've all received that in time to have a read through that before today's meeting. So the Parish Council can reference it knowing that it's all been seen and read with appropriate time. And the objection from the Campaign for Rural England shall be detailed throughout the officer report. This is the site in context with the overhead view.
Sorry, could I just stop you just for one moment? Councillor Gilbert, you seem to have a problem.
Yeah, thank you. I didn't receive that because my email's been down for the last few days. My laptop is now upstairs. Is that going to affect my ability to determine?
Okay, did anyone else not receive it?
I can't access me.
No, that's
emails.
fine.
Yeah.
Anyone else not receive it? Taylor, obviously you were in as a substitute. I'm looking for advice. Okay, that's fine. I've been advised that the material is not subsequent to actual decision making. So it's just the extra meat on the bones really is what it is. If you feel that following all the representations that we are going to now about to get, you feel you can't vote, then by all means, you know, I don't like it, but I will accept an abstention on those grounds from those two members. Okay, thank you very much. So I do apologise. Oh, yes, I'll have legal on that. He'll tell me something completely. Oh, no, we're going to have a conference. No, I'm not going to sing, but yes, I will cover off as much as I can while we have a discussion. That's a spanner been thrown in the works of my well-oiled machine. This is wonderful. Yes, thank you. What we're going to do, the case officer will summarise that report for you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I said the report is an article as opposed to a report. Apologies for the correction. It is an article from other parish councils in a different area. It does involve talk about Greenbelt, which is not relevant to this application or to this district. However, members, bear with me. I do have it up. I can summarise it. The article is entitled "The Problem with Solar Farms, Factors that Should be Considered in Determining Applications." I will point out to members, it's very clear when you're reading the article that actually the policies that have been taken are not Breckland's policies. At the end of it, they are for other authorities, and also snippets of the NPPF have been taken as opposed to the paragraph in full. This is not a problem with articles. It happens all the time. You'll notice within the officer report with a little bracket saying partial. We don't quote policies in full all the time. However, that's what's happened through here. So any of the sound bites were not necessarily full policy considerations. So the parish councils are all based in Essex and Hertfordshire, and that's where the article relates to. So the article begins with: the National Planning Policy Framework expects local authorities to protect and enhance valued landscape and sites of biodiversity and recognise the character and beauty of the countryside and the best and most versatile farmland in their policies and decisions. That quote is quite long and it's from the Right Honourable Robert Jenrick, which I think is a quote that's been quoted many times over the years. So the summary of key facts: solar farms are inefficient. Clustering and development around substations has disastrous consequences for landscape and local amenity. Solar panels dramatically alter views of the countryside. The character of heritage assets and our appreciation of them can be significantly harmed. Best and most versatile land, BNV land, grade 1, 2 and 3A should not be used for industrial purposes. Sequential testing is essential for any proposal involving green field land. Solar farms are not environmentally friendly. The amenity of neighbouring property can be seriously harmed. It is unlikely the land could return to agriculture in 40 years. How recyclable are the panels? Reinstatement bonds are worthless. There are better alternatives. They then detail the inefficiency of solar farms, stating in comparison to wind turbines within the North Sea and the comparable return of energy. And the capability of a 140-acre solar park is capable of supplying electricity to 9,000 homes. One wind turbine in the North Sea has the capacity to power 16,000 homes. As I said, I do apologise, these aren't referenced, and I am taking this from an article opposing solar farms. Someone else's words. In terms of efficiency rating, solar farms rating is between 11 and 15%, whereas offshore wind, the figure is 50% plus. And then their coalescence and cumulative effect. So developers promote the cheapest solutions only and do not consider a range of feasible options. Developers' preference for the lowest cost options leads to clustering around substations. They then reference substations and clustering within Essex and Hertfordshire. They do say that a development which is connected to a substation 11 kilometres from the site demonstrates there's no technological barrier to connecting sites at a range of locations. Increased harm to the character of public rights of way. Continuous rows of glass panels completely alter the landscape character. Boundaries are changed. The countryside is industrialised. Great weight should be given to the findings recommendations of landscape quality assessment. Solar farm development should not be approved for its contrary to policy. And the NBPF includes an overarching objective to protect and enhance our natural, built and historic environment, making effective use of land. Solar farm development deprives local historic buildings and places of context. I am going to go over, there's no objections on any historic basis for this application. As I said, this document is relating to other documents, so I'm only glossing over it for the fact that you have your consultee's response and there is no real objections based on historic character or impact on conservation areas or listed building. Archaeology is covered separately and specifically in the officer report. So I'm not playing it down, it's simply not as relevant for this application. The document then details the amount of arable land which is lost, and in fact it's the lowest since World War II, and the fact we need our food land to be productive, our agricultural land to be productive. Land quality, so BMV land should be avoided, that's best and most versatile. BMV land happens to be available from a farmer who wants to abandon farming is not compelling evidence. Local authority boundaries are not to be used as a limiting factor in the search for alternative options. They're talking about being able to go over different local authority boundaries. Sequential testing is required in relation to the use of agricultural land, and that should be required. And I've got some further quotes from MPs. I said these have been relatively well publicised over the past, I think about 7 years. I haven't checked the dates of the quotes. There's some emotive pictures of a dead deer and some sheep underneath the solar panels. Oh, deer underneath the solar panels, apologies. And that's in relation to the continued use of land as agricultural use. Bird and bat deaths are common as they mistake the glass for water. The land is degraded with little potential for biodiversity, as half of it will be in permanent shadow, and rainwater runoff creates set channels without proper dispersal. The next section is regarding residential amenity, and the residential neighbours have setting of their property altered and industrialised. Peace and quiet is destroyed, inverters can overheat, and boundaries again are delineated. And then talk about the future. And saying this is direct quote. Will the land ever revert to agriculture? Probably not. Will the equipment be recycled? Probably not. What condition will the land be in 40 years' time? Unknown. Bonds are mostly worthless. Do you know who is providing the bonds for? And then this is very specific. They actually reference it. And then they detail alternatives. Again, there's a nice image of solar panels on a large industrial site. I think it's Bentley car manufacturing site. And they go through for Build Back Greener. Local authorities required to have renewable policy. The policy should, however, reflect the circumstance of the district. Districts with high-grade land and outstanding countryside, such as Uttlesford and East Harts, are not suited to industrial scale solar plants. As I said, this is in relation to a different area. The 10-point plan for green industrial revolution, renewables are only considered in terms of offshore wind. The former Department of Energy and Climate Change estimated there's 600,000 acres of south-facing commercial roof space in the UK. Why use precious high-grade farmland? The government has publicised many policy papers dealing with renewable energy. These concentrate very largely on offshore wind rather than solar use as a source of renewable energy. I am skipping over the actual bits that are relevant directly to different authorities. And then they have snippets of the NPPF. These are mostly highlighted, you'll be pleased to know, within the office report with the updated references and paragraphs when necessary. And they go back through the heritage offers. And the last few pages they are picking up from policies that aren't Breckland District Council policies. There's quotes from ministerial statements. Well, these have been publicised. They're from 2013, 14, 15, and there is one from 2021. As I said, these are snippets of statements that are supporting mainly wind and commenting on solar farms. And then there's 1, 2, 3. I'm not going to read the policies. 4, 5. There's 5 pages at the end, which are East Harts and Essex specific policy references. So that's an overview of the document that was sent around councillors for members that didn't receive it yesterday.
Thank you. I'm just going to hand over to our solicitor for some direction, really.
Thank you, Gemma, for that summary. You've heard, Councillor Gilbert, the general thrust of this document. You can tell from what Gemma has summarised that it is very generic in nature. The specifics, of course, as you would expect, are all in the officer's report. It is now up to you whether, having heard the summary of that document, you feel that you have enough to go on. If you do, then you are very welcome to carry on. If you feel that actually you need to read the full article, then you must abstain. That is your discretion.
Microphone first, then we'll listen to you.
Things coming in late. If I was wanting to speak to this thing, I have to put in about 3 or 4 days before. This came in to us basically yesterday. If it was 600 pages, nobody could have time to read it. Surely we should have rules saying that. And this is an article which has been in the public domain, as far as I can understand, for months, not days. So it could have been sent to us, and this application has been around for a long time. I do sort of feel that we could be storing up problems for the future, because people could almost do a hijack operation on a committee by sending stuff in at the last minute, which obviously members wouldn't have time to ever consider.
Thank you, Simon.
Thank you, Chairman. Yes, this came in, I think, early yesterday. And you're quite right, we do have a cut-off of Friday. I took the view, speaking to the case officer, that it was probably important to make sure that members had sight of this The summary is quite a lengthy summary, but I think it is important in the interests of fairness and transparency and making sure that you're properly informed in your decision making, that you had sight of this. I don't think it sets a precedent. I think we just took a view that given the issues that are raised, it was important that you had a chance to have a look at this. So we sent it out as soon as we were able to.
Okay. Oh, sorry.
Did the applicants have the sight of it at the same time? Because they may well want to have responded to it themselves.
Hang on a sec. No, because
I do believe from memory, this article has been submitted previously with an objection. I have definitely read it previously. The other objection that came in from the CPRE has been on the website since late November, and the applicants have definitely, I did forward that to them specifically on the day that it arrived, and they have had view of the other piece, which was the objection from CPRE. I haven't summarised that because that has come in November, but I am going to go through the summary of the CPRE objection again and highlight relevant parts within the presentation, because that's linked in with all of the objections, but I will reference the CPRE specifically.
okay, I've just got Councillor Atwell. I do apologise that we took Councillor Dydon beforehand. You're okay, you're covered. Just one. Okay, that's fine. I've got Matt Lomax, Charles Miles Crest and Rob Booth. Are you satisfied with how you see this progressing at the moment, or would you like a slight extension on time to cover off what would be the, not so much negative points, but the other points that have been put in charge? I'm sorry, you'd have to announce who you are.
So Matt Lomax, and speaking on behalf of the applicant. I've not seen this document, but I've seen it previously anyway, so I'm happy to kind of continue on.
Okay, thank you very much. I do apologise, Gemma, if you'd like to pick it up where you can. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So this is the site in context, and apologies if I go over everything, but unfortunately I didn't get too far in, so you won't hear me repeat myself too much. Members will see, and this is in relation to the landscape visual impact assessment and the commentary on that. I can come back to this slide, of course, if members would like me to, but I would like just to point out the copse trees around the development site and in the wider locale. The reason I'm pointing these out is in relation to the landscape visual impact assessment, commentary, assessment, and proposed planting, pointed out so that you can see that copse trees are not alien in this landscape. They are sporadically placed and they are visible all around, including on the edges of the site here and further away from the site. So they're not an unusual feature in this rural location. As I said, this will have more context when I get onto the section regarding the landscape impact assessment and the commentary on that. And that's section 2, but I'll be dealing with that in slightly out of order from your report, just for ease of watching and going through actually. So this is the site layout plan. Members will see within the report it's detailed that this is what the applicant refers to as the worst case scenario plan. The site layout plan is indicative. They will know where everything is going if the application is approved, when the condition is applied, and when the condition is sought to be discharged. So members are seeing what's called the worst case scenario. This is the worst case coverage of the site. Members will notice, if you can see with my cursor here, it looks like there's going to be a green corridor across here. This is actually not so much a green corridor, but a blue corridor. There is flood risk on site, surface water flooding on site. And this is covered here as we don't allow development. You'll see in the flood section there from the EA's comments with no objection. We don't allow development on areas which are at risk of surface water flooding. So that area here is left. It's also, you'll see on the next slide, that's the area of best and most versatile land, which is grade 2, that section. So that's on the next slide. There's been 28 objections which are summarised within your officer's report to this application. I'm not going to read them all verbatim. I know members have had sight of them, but they detail around food security. It is not possible to screen the impact on the landscape. It's industrialisation of a rural location. Government proposes to include 3B land as best and most versatile land, which is BNV land. Batteries can combust and overheat. The development will create noise, light. There is a flood area on site and it is too large in this location. I said there are others, these are summarised within. In support of the application, there's been 74 letters of support submitted and as shown on the website in support of this application. Again, they are summarised within the report available in full on the website, but I will give you a brief summary of the main points now. It will significantly improve biodiversity on site. It will contribute to Breckland and the UK's carbon saving targets. It is completely reversible, essential and well thought out, needed, cleaner air, and we need to move away from fossil fuels. And several actually did mention the future of our children was quite a key point that came through. In addition to the letters of objection support from the local residents, the Campaign to Protect Rural England has written in, so they wrote in November, so it's been in the public domain since then, and a copy was sent round to members yesterday at the request of Great Dunham Parish Council and at the request of the Campaign for Rural England. They very politely requested it was sent round, and it was sent round yesterday acknowledging the late send off, but their objections are included obviously within the objection summary. For further detail, their main objection is regarding the proposed use of the agricultural land, saying it is not necessary and it's not compliant with policy ENV 10 of the Breckland local plan, as poorer quality land should be utilised where possible. And this proposal, whilst they've submitted the alternative site document, have stated reasons such as the land not becoming available, not being available, and the Campaign for Protection of Rural England, CPRE, disagree that this is a reason for this site being chosen, the best and most versatile land being chosen. As I said, the applicant has submitted an alternative site document detailing the reasons, the site locations, and stating the quality of the land and the size of the quality of the best and most versatile land. We'll get to it later. The application is also a loss of over 20 hectares of best and most versatile land for a period of up to 40 years. This is a temporary application and the application can be conditioned to be fully reversed at the end of the expiration of the planning permission. Best and most versatile land on site comprises 33.4 hectares. As I said, a portion of it won't be constructed upon because it is within the flood area of surface water flood risk, very clear surface water flood risk on site. And it is within that area. So surface water flood risk and flood risk, my apologies, that's with the EA's comments, you'll see one of the sections in the report. This area will not have any development on it. Also, there is a portion of development on the area which is comprising of copse trees, as you'll see on the landscape visual impact assessment, the landscape slide, which I'll show you shortly. So that's the Campaign for Protection of Rural England's primary objection to the application. And they would have preferred different sites. They do highlight brownfield sites should be used. The objectors have also stated there are disused airfields within the district that could have been used and point towards brownfields. As I said, we are satisfied that the document submitted has detailed reasoning sufficient to comply with that section of policy ENV 10 on the alternative sites proposed and why this site has been chosen in comparison to the others. That's detailed partially within reference to the flood section of your report, and there's a detail in that with reference to Natural England's comment, which I shall come to. The objectors and Campaign for Protection of Rural England have also noted the land is currently arable farmed land, which is in productive agricultural use. This is accepted, and the applicants have provided me with a bit of additional information saying the land is currently used for the production of barley and feed wheat, which is animal feed, and sugar beet. There will be an element of agricultural use retained on the site should the development be approved. It's very common on solar farms for sheep to graze under the land to go over to graze land. Here is the agricultural land grade. You can see the section that I pointed out earlier. It's only blue because that's the agricultural land grade on this, but that is the area of flood risk upon the site. And you can see the subgrade 3A is the darker blue. I think you should be able to read the key. I've made it large enough. And 3B land is the majority of the site, and the other land, I do believe there's small copses on site or singular trees. So that is the agricultural land grading of the site. Great Dunham Parish Council's objection is summarised, I think it's actually almost in full within your report, but they also point out the loss of the agricultural use of the land and the fact that this will be moved from food production for a period of 40 years. They stated that it's in appropriate locations. There will be significant visual impact due to the undulating nature of the landscape. You'll see that more on the photographs that I'll be showing later. Actually, the photographs and the landscape visual impact pictures are very good at showing the undulating nature of the land. The site is located within 2 landscape character areas referenced by Breckland's landscape character assessment, sorry. And Breckland District Council's policy ENV5 in respect to protection enhanced states that high protection will also be given to river valleys and chalk rivers in Breckland. And the proposed site includes a shallow valley with a minor river Nard tributary system. Again, you'll be able to see that here. This is Great Dunham Parish Council's objection. As stated, there is probable Roman settlement in the locality. Lithium-ion batteries have been reported in the natural press as being combustible. Issue raised regarding the roads and the disruption, and they object to the application. Little Dunham Parish Council has said that there must be better landscape mitigation. This is evolved throughout the period of the application, which you will be able to, you've read in the report, and you'll see the landscape mitigation proposed. And they said a traffic management plan must relate to HGV and other site, and the air conditioning fan shall only operate between 8 and 10 p.m. But other than that, Little Dunham Parish Council have no objection subject to those matters being resolved. You can detail through your other consultee responses as we go through, which includes the Historic Environment Service. But we'll jump straight to the MP. The MP has not written in to support nor object to the application, but George Freeman MP has written in, and I do believe members have received a copy of that letter quite some time ago. It's also available on the website, and it's been summarised within the officer report. And the MP has detailed quite well, in my humble opinion, the feelings of the local residents in favour and against the application. The principle of the development is discussed at section 1 of your report. The principle of renewable energy is supported by local and national policy. I won't read everything verbatim, it's all within the report before you. But the conclusion is, given the presumption in favour of renewable low carbon solar energy as set out in policy ENV, the National Planning Policy Framework, as well, the development in principle subject to other matters is acceptable. The other matters, and members will note, this application comes down to the planning balance because there is a conflict. That is highlighted within your conclusion and summarised at 2.18 of your officer report. So this does come down to planning balance, and we'll go through that shortly. If we detail with regards the other commentary, and we'll leave landscape and the planning balance to the final points. The amenity, there's no objections from your environmental health officers subject to condition. One of the conditions is that there'll only be a reading of, on the nearest residential boundaries, 3 decibels, 3 dB, that can be conditioned, it's in your draft conditions. I have looked up that reading, and this is me looking up from the websites available. 3 decibels is barely audible, it's along the lines of rustling leaves, and I've looked at the charts. So the actual noise at the residential boundaries will be defined as very low, and this can be conditioned by environmental health, and they've put their standard condition for checking, how it's checked and how this is maintained within that, and that's in your report. The Parish Council, it is noted, Little Dunham Parish Council has said that they would like the fans to only operate between certain hours. It's actually felt that the condition requested by environmental health is more practical, will reduce the noise levels even further because it controls the noise all of the time. This gives a 24-hour a day basically condition. As I said, it's done between certain times. They do the decibels, the condition is there, but that is there at all times as the standard condition. So it is not suggested that we restrict the operating hours, which is in contradiction to Little Dunham's request for the condensing units. But that's detailed within the report, and so that's from environmental health. With regards to amenity on light, light will be conditioned, and this is also part of a very standard ecological condition with regards to light pollution will come through from that. There's a glint and glare assessment submitted in support of the application. Environmental Health have looked through this and said that this is acceptable, subject to the mitigation within the glint and glare assessment being applied. This involves landscaping, which again, landscaping has been looked at very heavily as part of this application. The landscape plan will have to meet the glint and glare mitigation requirements as well as the landscape visual impact requirements. So there's two caveats for that one, but they will meet both and there's no objections. Norfolk County Council Highways will review the glint and glare with reference the impact on the public highway. Norfolk County Council Highways are still reviewing the plans. They've had to look to their network route cabling officer. I probably had the job title wrong, my apologies. And they will be coming back with that. I have spoken to them informally regarding the application and they have said that they've seen nothing that is what they call a showstopper. National Highways have come back and requested a condition, which is within your draft conditions. The applicants have obviously seen it. And that is primarily with regards to the cabling route, because that's the piece that impacts the roads as far as national highways are concerned about. We go on to ecology. There's no objections from the consultant ecologist following the submissions of the relevant details. There are quotes within your report about the increased biodiversity, which is a net increase of 87.7% of habitat units and 16.72% of linear habitat units. And your consultant ecologist has said subject to conditions. They have no objection to the application as it stands. Again, regard to flood risk and drainage, I know I touched on this briefly and you can see the section of land through this report, through this map here, which is one of the reasons why I've left it up. The lead local flood authority have not commented on the application specifically. They've provided a generic response. As such, Wrekin District Council have gone out and consulted with a separate private drainage body. Their report has come in. There's a couple of points of clarification, but the report is primarily stating that all matters have been adequately dealt with, subject to a couple of additional points of information, the formulation of conditions, and that's regarding drainage. The reason that we went to separate consultations is although the lead local flood authority standard view is that 95% of solar farm sites are still permeable by their very nature. Given the size of this site, 5% is still quite a lot. So we've been and had the drainage assessments independently assessed. And whilst the report is still at the final stages of review, there is no objections subject to conditions on the drainage of this site. The Environment Agency have noted the flood risk on the site, which I have stated. Again, I will reiterate there will be no built development. This will be secured by conditions at the stage where we know the final layout of the site. There will be no built development within the flood area on this site. And that is in accordance with national and local planning policy, specifically policy ENV 09 of the Breckland local plan. It is therefore assessed that subject to the conditions requested by the consultant that we have employed for drainage, the application complies with policy ENV 09 of the Breckland local plan. The question's been asked with regards to environmental impact assessment and why one hasn't been carried out. This site has actually been screened twice. One slightly smaller, one slightly larger site area, and it's been decided that no environmental impact assessment is required, and this was rescreened when the application came in. It's not an EIA site. To go back to the agricultural land classification section, this is again with reference to the Campaign for Protection of Rural England's objection. Natural England is a statutory consultee on the loss, be it temporary or otherwise, of best and most versatile agricultural land. There is over 20 hectares, if it's over 20 hectares, this site does involve the temporary loss of over 20 hectares of agricultural land, and Natural England have come back stating they have no objection to the application. The no objection to the application has been checked, and I have actually gone back to see if they could give me a timetable. They've not given a timetable currently, simply because they reference 25 years and the application is for 40 years. So Natural England have no objection to the temporary loss, and stating the reason for their no objection in part is because it is a temporary loss of best and most versatile agricultural land. Members will now see some photographs you'll be pleased to see. This is the site area. This is the site area. As part of the landscape visual assessment, the applicants have superimposed solar panels from the various points. Oh, excuse me. Wrekin District Council employed a landscape visual impact consultant to assess the information submitted and the mitigation proposed. So this is the site with panels, as members can see. As I said, I think that shows up very clearly on these screens. So that's the site without, and this is, as you see at the top, the junction of Palgrave Road and Hall Road, and these are the different. So these are the visual points that have been assessed. Of course, the whole site has been looked. The consultant has been around the whole site and had a look from the periphery and has assessed the landscape scheme and the planting proposed. And most of this is detailed within your report. I will not go through it verbatim. Another one, this is from Footpath FP1. There's no objections from the Public Rights of Way officer following the submission of additional information. And members can see the solar panels here. That's the, there we are. I'll take you through. You can see the small undulating nature of the site from this photo, but there are others which show it. There we are. There will be a condition noting that the site plans are indicative that solar panels will be restricted to no more than 3 meters in height. That's a far better photograph to show the undulating nature of the site. And the change to the landscape with solar panels. I'll just go back. There we are. And this is the illustrative landscape and biodiversity strategy. This is where I was referencing the copse trees, stating that the imposition of additional copse trees within the site will not look out of keeping with the whole character of the area. The landscape consultant has said that whilst there is acknowledged that the increased hedging and planting will offer some mitigation, this isn't sufficient, and has asked that copse trees planting. So this is the final strategy that's put forward. These are indicative to demonstrate that this is what can be provided. This will be conditioned for the landscape strategy, which is standard when we know the final layout. Again, members will note the corridor, the central point for the flood risk area, and a slight setback of land at the south east point. So this is your indicative planting. Now, the landscape consultant has still found that this application does not fully comply with your policies. And these are listed within the report. Doesn't comply fully with policy ENV 10, ENV 05 and COM 03. COM 03 is with regards to the amenity impacts of individuals. You will be able to see the solar farm from first floor windows, and therefore there is a non-compliance with this. It will have an impact. In addition, the mitigation as proposed will not completely mitigate the impact of the site. It is accepted that over 90 hectares of solar farm in any area will be visible at points, and the mitigation proposed will mitigate the impact, but not so sufficiently to overcome it being not in compliance with policy on its own. However, when we assess developments such as this, we're going to go through the planning balance, and we assess the compliance with other policies, and we look at the development plan as a whole, as you've had a plan taken as a whole. So this is applying the planning balance, taking the development plan as a whole through partial compliance with policy ENV10, read in line with national planning policy framework, which is in favour of renewable energy, subject to the mitigation as referenced. It's very much in line with policy ENV10, or ENV10, sorry, not ENV10. And it is in compliance with policy ENV 2, 6, 7, 8, 9, and GEN 01 of the Brecon local plan. We take you round. These are some site photos that possibly, I do apologise, are not quite as good as the ones submitted in support of the landscape visual impact, but they do show the undulation of the land within the character, and they also show the current quality of the hedging, which is proposed to be reinforced with further planting. So that would be conditioned if the application is approved And back to the location plan, which gives you the assessment as a whole. It has been noted that one of the near receptors, which is impacted by the visual amenity of the site, is actually one of the landowners. There's 2 landowners on this site. Members will have also noted within the local papers, there's been discussions on archaeology and the Roman settlement in or nearby and the finding of coins. Historic Environment Service are satisfied with the application as it stands. There has been a geophys survey submitted in support of the application, and we're just awaiting finalised comments for reduction of trial trenching from 5% to 3.5% following additional information. But there is a draft condition put on as requested by the Historic Environment Service. So in conclusion, on planning balance, when the development is assessed against the development plan as a whole, subject to conditions, subject to no objections from highways, and subject to conditions as requested, which is still outstanding by the drainage consultants, the application is assessed as in compliance with the development plan as a whole and is recommended for approval. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you very much. I'm just going to ask Rebecca to just clarify something which I'm not sure whether members would have got slightly confused on a statement that was made. Rebecca, please.
So the chairman questioned the application type. It is a full application type in front of you, so you are considering all matters. But the question was about the condition 4, where we require actual detailed plans of the panels, battery cabins, inverters, CCTV equipment, etc. We do this with all renewable energy applications. That's because there's certain permits and certain surveying that needs to take place after planning permission is granted, and that finalises the exact locations, but it still remains a full application. The development parameters are set, the landscaping parameters are set, but it might be the actual degree of the arrays that's changed slightly. But the number of cabins, the number of arrays, the number of batteries, the number of CCTV equipment, the location of the fencing all stays within the application. But we do this on all renewable energy applications where we actually condition the final details, and that's to do with degrees and permits that can only be finalised after planning permission is granted.
Okay, thank you. I think that would have sounded different if I'd have said it, but anyway, never mind. Okay, so we're going to go now to our speakers, and we're going to start with Brenda Upton, who's the Great Dunham Parish Council representative. If you can make sure your microphone's on, and you have 3 minutes. Oh, you've got photos apparently.
They were sent out with our pack before Friday. Sorry? Right, okay, thank you. So Great Dunham is a small rural village, and because of the importance of this proposal, the Parish Council has held public meetings and listened to feedback after presentations given by developers of the proposed solar farm. Whilst acknowledging the importance of renewable energy and having listened to the view of local residents, it is the unanimous decision of the Parish Council to oppose this proposed development. Some individuals have left comments on Breckland Council's website, many of which are very detailed and address specific issues both for and against the proposed development. 74 of those comments that say they're in favour of this proposal, but approximately 30 are in identical standard pro forma letter format, the majority of which are dated the 3rd of January 2023 and are redacted. It would be extremely misleading to assume that there is a significant body of opinion in favour of this scheme. There isn't. The main substance of our objections are: the size of this proposed development is on an industrial scale in an agricultural and rural landscape and would have a hugely detrimental effect on the local environment and on the lives of those who live and work within it. The bowl effect of the location would also result in noise pollution from the inverters and cooling systems. Over 100 hectares, 250 acres of productive farmland will be taken out of food production, and the importance of food security in this country should not be underestimated. Overwhelmingly, the land involved in grade 3A, the land involved is grade 3A with a small section of grade 2, which government guidelines specifically state should not be used for solar farms. Little consideration has been given to the landscape setting, and the developers have admitted that it's not possible to adequately screen this undulating site, so there will be an adverse visual impact for miles around. There is no benefit to the local community, only to the landowners and developers who will make substantial financial profits. The proposed development is in conflict with and contrary to Brexton Zone's landscape planning policies, namely ENV 05, ENV 10, CDM 03 and landscape strategy. These important policies should not be ignored. Also, Campaign for Protection of Rural England states that solar farms must be located in areas not detrimental to landscape character, visual amenity or food security. Kings Lynn and West Norfolk Borough Council have recently noted that view and rejected a proposed solar farm at Sedgeford. In summary, this Dunham development is in the wrong location and a more suitable and appropriate brownfield site should be identified. For those reasons, I would respectfully urge the council to refuse this application. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We've got Simon Fowler, please, who's the chairman of Little Dunham Parish Council, and 3 minutes, sir.
Thank you very much, Chair. Good morning, members. I'm feeling a little bit alone and unloved here, actually, because it hasn't really been stressed to you enough, I feel, that half the area where the subject of this application actually falls in Little Dunham. And half in Great Dunham. So I'd just like you to bear that point in mind, if I may. Little Dunham Parish Council do not object to this application. We agree with our friends that it's a lovely rural valley, unspoilt, that is going to be defaced by urban clutter. But on the other hand, the imperatives of green energy and energy security outweigh that in the unanimous view, I have to say, of Little Dunham Parish Council. However, the lack of objection is dependent, I must stress, on two conditions which have been touched upon. It's condition 7 and condition 10 in your report. One is to deal with the traffic management plan when the application goes through its construction phase, should you approve it, because the roads are wholly unsuitable to any weight of traffic. These are rural, unclassified roads in the main. And so it is our view that if the owner of the land concerned, who is going to be the substantial beneficiary, as has been mentioned already, should bear the brunt of the road traffic over his land. He has tracks which will have to be upgraded to take the construction traffic, but they must not go through the village of Little Dunham. And I would really hope that the traffic management plan is going to be enforced, because if it isn't, I can assure you and your council officers that I will be on the case. So that is the first thing. The second thing, the landscape mitigation that has been proposed is, in our view, wholly inappropriate and inadequate. You have heard that the details will be teased out later, but the hedges must be not just the gaps planted, but massively reinforced with greenery. There are going to be, as my count, 15 containers on site. You know what containers look like, the big industrial containers. There is no landscape mitigation for those. They should be planted. It won't affect the efficacy of the solar farm. They must be screened as well. And I would ask the officials that when with the details of the landscape mitigation are published, I would ask that both Great and Little Dunham councils are consulted, and I would ask the applicants to take that on board and come and see us. And I would stress that condition needs to be beefed up. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you. Now, I've got 3 speakers who are all objectors. They've all agreed to have 1 minute each. I'll be slightly flexible. I've got in order John Butterfield, Chris Rideout, and Daniel Duthie. And what I will do, if you can go in that order, if it suits you to do that, then what we'll do is I'll just ring the bell, and if the next speaker would like to continue. Okay, gentlemen?
Okay, this is an enormous proposal which dwarfs entirely the settled areas of either Little Dunham or Great Dunham. And it just seems bizarre that it somehow escapes the need for an environmental impact assessment, in that it's a Schedule 2 renewable energy project exceeding somewhat half a hectare in size, and it will have it will certainly have a visual impact. So how can an industrial style development of 1 square kilometre on an undulating site that can't be screened effectively, not have a significant visual impact. Contrary to local plan policy in ENV 05, the proposed development will impact on key visual sensitivities within 2 Breckland landscape character areas. And it's also going to impact heavily on the recreation and amenity value of 2 very quiet lanes, Hall Lane and Palgrave Road, which form a circular route for walkers, cyclists and the horse riders. The assessment with the concentrated on 2 footpaths.
Good morning. From me, 2 objections. First, this is inappropriate use of productive agricultural land, an issue raised many times in Parliament. The consensus is development should be guided away from the best and most fertile land, preferably 3B, 4 and 5, within an 8-mile radius of swath from other sites with these lower grade lands could be used. Second objection, there will be no environmental benefit, negating one of the main claims of the application and support letters. Aerial photographs show many solar farms have poor grass growth. Selective herbicides and growth regulating chemistries will be essential to control tall weeds, grasses and suppress seeds. They're applied early summer, the most significant period for harming pollinating insects. Surely the environmental land management scheme, which pays farmers for sustainable practices, offers a more effective approach to benefiting the environment than the proposed solar farm.
I'd like to bring 2 points to your attention. Current biodiversity and net gain. Public authorities have a statutory duty to have a full regard to conserving biodiversity. The applicant's ecologists list numerous UK bat priority habitats and red listed species. This proposal only tries to meet net gain's minimum requirements, mainly through avoidance and planting wildflower margins, all of which could be done as part of an existing farming operation, so there's no net gain. It also pays no thought to how existing habitats work within a wider nature recovery networks, and therefore, if agreed, suggests that the council will have failed in their statutory duty. River catchment and legacy. Included within the development is a tributary to the River Nar, SSI. Solar cells include toxic materials such as lead and cadmium. So in the future, are we going to see a once rural landscape littered with equipment too expensive to decommission and recycle, polluting one of the country's finest chalk rivers as this council's legacy? Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you. I've got Craig Rogers, please, who's a supporter. 3 minutes, sir. Thank you.
As a local resident of Little Dunham and a father of 2 young children, I'm strongly in favour of this planning application. This is because it enables the transition to cleaner, cheaper, renewable energy. Both my children attend Great Dunham Primary School, and it is their generation which is likely to see the worst effects of climate change. I don't know about you, but the 40-degree heat last summer was truly terrifying, because as a family, we had to go to extreme lengths to keep our house cool. And these events are only likely to become more commonplace in the future due to climate change. My educational background originates in environmental biology, and I've worked within the water industry all my working life. I'm acutely aware of the damage that human beings have done to our natural environment, but I'm also a realist that understands that if we want to maintain our current standard of living, then we need to change our world for the better. We do this by moving away from our addiction of creating and burning fossil fuels. I chose that word carefully because it is an addiction. For too long, we've blindly gone about our business, damaging our natural environment to our own detriment, creating significant sources of land, water and air pollution. Climate change and human pollution are both intrinsically linked. Reduce one and you improve the other. Day after day, I see huge amounts of misinformation reported in the national media about how solar farms will destroy our natural environment, take huge amounts of vital farming land out of production, create a desert for wildlife, and storage batteries will catch fire. The truth is that all current and future solar farms were developed, and this would take just up 690 square kilometres, or just 0.28% of the total UK landmass. DEFRA has made it clear that climate change, not solar panel power, is the biggest long-term risk to the nation's domestic food supply, with the most productive and fertile farming land reduced from 38% to 11% by 2050. Solar farms leave the ground untouched and undisturbed for 40 years, and research by both Keele University and the Universities of York and Lancaster set out a growing body of evidence that a well-designed and managed solar farm could provide a haven for British wildlife. For those that don't know, the reason why we're all suffering from astronomical increases in our energy bills is because our electricity prices are tied to the last megawatt of electricity generated to meet our national demand. Because of this, megawatt is normally generated by highly volatile gas prices. This sets the price we all pay. Once we generate surplus renewable energy, we can break this link and turn off all fossil fuel power generation, thus greatly reducing our energy bills. Breckling Council declared a climate emergency in September 2019, and in January 2021, you followed this up by appointing a full-time climate change and environment officer to help with the delivery of sustainability. I would like to see strong leadership by supporting and approving such schemes like this going forwards.
Thank you very much. I've got Matt Lomax, please. You have 3 minutes, please.
Thank you. Members of the committee, thank you for allowing me to speak in support of this application today. My name is Matt Lomax, I'm planning manager at Low Carbon. If councillors have any questions, myself and some of the team are available to respond. This proposal is for a 49.9 megawatt solar farm with 10 megawatts of battery storage. Once operational, it will provide enough electricity to meet 13% of Breckland's current annual demand. It will save 11,000 tonnes of CO2 per annum and have a sizable and positive impact on security of energy supply. To place this in context, this project would increase current renewable energy in the district by 45% and power 16,500 homes. Decarbonising the UK's energy system will require an extraordinary effort. As one of the quickest and cheapest form of low carbon energy, solar has a key role to play in meeting net zero as soon as possible. Projects must be realised in all regions if we are to achieve it, provided their impacts can be made acceptable. Low Carbon has worked throughout the development process to design a project which is sympathetic to environmental and land use constraints, mitigates impacts on the local community, and which also creates community benefits. We have worked extensively with the council, consultees and local residents to understand concerns and ensure that these are accommodated within our proposals. Where there are localized temporary impacts, we have balanced these against the urgent need to deliver as much clean, secure and affordable energy as we can to meet the climate emergency and the energy crisis we now face. Furthermore, we have enhanced other benefits the project will bring, such as the biodiversity net gain of 87% and a community benefit fund of £140,000. The result is a project which is deemed by your planning officers to provide a positive planning balance and where the benefits of the project outweigh the impacts. Councillors, you have before you today a well-received proposal with officer, consultee and local support that can make a huge difference to the climate and energy crisis, both locally and nationally. I therefore would urge you to support your officer's recommendation and approve the application.
Thank you very much. Thank you. We now go over to questions from members. Members wishing to ask any questions at all? Sorry, Councillor Kittle-Morris going first or last?
I'll go first, Chairman. I'm just going to make a statement, if I may.
Please do.
I am the ward rep and I represent both Great Dunham and Little Dunham areas. So this application is wholly in my ward. I have deliberately not stated my opposition or approval of this, so I can sit here today and vote and ask questions. So I will ask questions later if I may, Chairman. I think if I could affirm with the solicitor that that is the case, if I had said in public that I either approve or reject, don't like this application, I could not sit here and vote.
I agree that if you've been predetermined, you most certainly couldn't have.
Thank you. I've got Councillor Attawell, Councillor Wilkinson, Councillor Kyburn and Councillor Gilbert. Over to you, Councillor Atwell, please.
Thank you. A few questions for Gemma, if I may. Thank you for going through that presentation. I'm sure that wasn't easy. First thing, can you just advise me what the financial community benefit is? Is there any, and just a little bit more detail on that, because I think that's something that has been raised.
There we are. I can advise it's not a material consideration. It's detailed within the report. The MP and other objectors and supporters actually said that there was no community benefit coming through by financial means. It is assessed a development such as this for a solar farm. There's no obligations required. We don't have a policy that requires a community fund to come through. So anything that the applicants have entered into talks with is separate from the planning decision-making process. It is not a material consideration, and therefore it's not part of the decision-making.
In that case, it might not be a material consideration, but it's something that I want to know. So can I ask the applicant, have you entered into any conversations with the community about potential financial benefit?
It's been explained that it's not a planning issue. So it's just.
That might be the case, but I'm still here asking the question, Chairman. I'd like to just know, because we've done these, so we've done a few of these solar farms now, and there's always been a community benefit. So I'd just like to know if that conversation has been had.
Thanks. I'm getting an answer from my solicitor, which didn't help me much. But anyway, go on then, answer the question, please. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. So we offer on all of our projects a community benefit fund. It is separate from the planning process. It is a short form legal agreement which we enter into between ourselves and the parish councils directly. There's been some initial discussions, but until we have a permission, we don't get into detail.
Next question, if I may.
Thank you.
On the planting, it's been said by the gentleman from Little Dunham that the planting as suggested at the moment is not adequate enough. Has there been any movement from the applicant in terms of willingness to engage and improve that planting? Is that something that we're happy that with conditions we will get that improved?
We've worked with the applicant and our landscape consultant, landscape visual impact consultant employed to improve the planting away from, and I don't mean just, because actually reinforcing hedges is very important for biodiversity and screening, but it's moved away from the reinforcement of hedges and includes the planting of copses. So there will be actual tree planting and that can be conditioned and enforced. And in addition to the normal for trees is 5 years, this would probably be conditioned for 10 years. And I do believe the suggested management of it is 20 years. So we'd look at more, however, this doesn't necessarily overcome all of the visual impact. The site will still be seen.
And in terms of the gentleman's request about the traffic management plan and use of the landowner's tracks, is that something that we can enforce?
Norfolk County Council Highways are still looking at the construction management plan, and that will be subject to their input. As I said, one has been submitted. It's not yet been completely agreed. If Norfolk County Council Highways come in with a alternative, as consultees, they hold a significant amount of weight, as it is in policy TR01 is to TR02, sorry, to create a safe transport network for the construction period as well as the development as a whole. However, solar farms don't usually have very much traffic for their actual operational period. So yes, the construction management plan will be looked at by Norfolk County Council Highways, and one will be come up with that they deem appropriate. And any permission that members are willing to grant will be subject to their consultation response, and no objection to this.
And finally, on the environmental benefits, we've heard much about the planting, but actually the environmental benefit of the green energy for energy security, I think for me is quite an overriding factor here. I'm thinking about greenhouse gases. I was fortunate enough just before Christmas, just before New Year, become a grandfather again. I might have mentioned that to 1 or 2 people. Yeah, and lovely little granddaughter called Brooke. And I look at her and I think, what kind of world are we passing on? And for me, I have to say, Chairman, the overriding fact here is the security of that green energy. I think there's, you can always say, put it somewhere else, but I think we've got to get away from, this gentleman spoke very eloquently, I think, the greenhouse gases, and we need to get away from relying on gas imports from abroad. And the only way we're going to do that is secure our own energy supply. And this to me seems a very good way of doing that here in Norfolk. So I fully support it.
Thank you, Councillor Atwell. I'm looking at you, Clive Dunn does leap to my mind. Sorry? Yep, no, thank you. Councillor Wilkinson, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. One point, what was brought up by my colleague, in my ward 15 years ago, we had a solar farm put in, only half the size of this one. Nobody knows it's there, and there was benefits with the local community. If land permission is given, that they can talk to the company and have solar panels fitted on their community centre roofs and village hall roofs and that sort of thing. That's an option for benefiting the community. Question for the applicant. So do you know how long, if we minded to give permission, how long construction would take? Obviously, then the residents would know what impact's going to have on them for a little while. And another point as well, which I have thought about quite a lot with the wind farms in the North Sea. When these solar panels come to their life end, I know it's 40 years down the line, and we want to have green energy for our grandchildren, like my colleague said, but we don't want to leave them with a pile of rubble in the middle of a field. Is there a plan for removal and recycling of those equipment and panels? And if you haven't got a plan, have you seen anything where it, can you tell us if that can be recycled? Basically, that's what I'm trying to say. Thanks.
Please do.
So to address your first point on transport and kind of construction duration, so we typically, a solar farm of this size would take between 16 to 20 weeks for its entire kind of construction. Yeah, I trust that kind of answers that question. In terms of decommissioning, we would produce a decommissioning plan, and which would detail how we would go about taking out all the equipment, and also how we kind of pay for that, cover that cost, because as I say, it's a 40-year permission, so it's quite a long time in the future. In terms of the actual structures on site, so all of the panels are on steel frames, which are driven into the ground. So there's no concrete involved with the actual panels themselves. The only concrete is the inverter, the container bases, which typically is like 0.05% of the total site area. So it's quite a small area of the total site that needs to be kind of broken up and taken off site. So it is a very low impact form of development, and it's wholly reversible. Just to raise a point on solar panels themselves. So currently they are 90% of the materials within solar panels can currently be recycled, and you would hope over time that's only going to improve. So I just answer your question.
Thank you very much for that. Thank you. I've got Councillor Gilbert, please, and then Councillor Kybird.
Thank you, Chairman. First of all, Emma Jevons, thank you very much for that summary. That article is very helpful. And can I say that having listened to that, and from what I've read and what I've heard, I'm content that I can make a decision. But my question, something was said very briefly about lighting. Is there any, can I ask, is there any lighting on site? If so, how much and where?
Yes, certainly I can answer that question. So the DNO substation, which is on site, that would be the only structure that would require any kind of lighting, which would typically be a safety light, a downlighter, just to make sure that if there is any requirement for out of daylight hours access, that there would be. But there's no lighting required across any other parts of the site. It's purely the substation.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Kybird.
Thank you, Chairman. Just to go back to the screening and the planting, is there any reason why the storage containers cannot be fully screened with planting?
So the containers will have an acoustic wooden fence to address noise concerns. So they'll be screened by a wooden fence. The details of that could be agreed and submitted by condition. We did look at planting. That would then, if that becomes legacy planting, permanent planting, and then the site is fully decommissioned, it would kind of, I think it'd make the site look a bit strange having small rectangles of planting around. So our preference and our proposal was to use the acoustic fencing.
Thank you very much. Councillor Peter-Morris, are you satisfied or would like to come back on anything?
Yeah, I've got some questions, Chairman. First of all, I will say that I have a solar farm in my village of Litcham, which I supported, and I do support solar panels in the right place. However, what I'd like to know is how we came to this site. There are two things. One is the point of connection. So where does the point of connection, who decided on the point of connection? And was the area of search for alternative sites, either the sequential test, was that carried out as a reliance on that point of contact and the distance from that point of contact in terms of electric string under the ground?
Are you prepared to answer that or no?
Oh, sorry.
I'd probably defer to your officer to give details on the alternative site assessment. Yeah, I can answer any specific questions from that.
Over to you, Gemma, if you can answer that.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. There was submitted an alternative site assessment in support of the application, which detailed, I do have it, please excuse me while I look it up, I don't want to give you incorrect figures. It had a number of sites and it detailed their agricultural land quality as well, which is part of the bit that goes to inform the decision of the best and most versatile discussions on the point. So 1 second. So 59 sites were investigated and put forward as part of that. I'm not an electrical connections expert, I'm afraid. However, there is 8 kilometres of cabling proposed to reach the substation. And actually, as provided by Great Dunham, they have detailed other ones which have 11 kilometres. One presumes there is a limitation with the distance that you can travel financially to connect to a substation. So the alternative site selection with the 59 sites was done on quite a large, I was going to say, I don't think I have it detailed on here, but it's done on a decent sized round area for the connection point to make it what I assume is a viable development. The sites were assessed along the lines of their suitability, their agricultural land grade, the size and their availability as well, because that's one of the problems when you're assessing alternative sites. They actually do need to be available and not known availability. So that's why others were discounted.
Yes, please. Because there is another very large amount of electric string arriving in your village, with gigawatt power coming into it from offshore. That point of connection was given to those developers by National Grid. I wonder if this point of connection was given by National Grid, and that was the reason why we had an area of search which was connected to that point of connection. The other one was, I've been through the sequential test. and all the land that was 59, and there was sifted down to about 30 something, 34 or 39, I can't remember. Most of those assessments said that this land was not available. I just wondered whether those landowners were contacted or whether this was a tabletop exercise to look at some suitable land and just pass it up within that area of search.
Yeah, Rebecca, please.
Although interesting material, a bit like the community fund, it's not a material consideration to this application in that your MPPF is your policy that talks about whether when you apply looking at other sites, and that's paragraph 158. Paragraph 158 says that well, in a local plan or a development plan document, you've identified sites for solar farm, and then development comes forward outside of those sites, then you need to justify why you're not using the sites that are identified and using land outside it. As you all are aware, there's no identified sites for renewable energy in the local plan, and therefore no requirement to sequential test, albeit the applicants have carried out a sequential test so you see that they have looked at alternative sites. So although I agree it's interesting how we've got to this point, what you need to consider in my view is the site on its own merits. That's up to you members based on the information that's in front of you that you've heard today and the officer's recommendation in the report. And the merits of this site, you can only consider the merits of this site in relation to your adopted development plan policies and the MPPF as a significant material consideration.
Okay.
Well, what I'm trying to say, Chairman, is that I don't think this site is suitable for this development. And I think there may be other sites, and if the sequential test had been carried out on a different point of connection, we might have got a different site which was more suitable on a brownfield site somewhere rather than this one. So, you know, that's where I'm coming from. Although I support applications such as this in the right place, I am not of the opinion that this is the right place for this particular size of development.
Thank you. You're entitled to that comment. That's not a problem. But as you well know, that as you spoke of the what's called the power station, but with response to the offshore wind farm coming through to Necton. Necton is actually, or they were both Necton, but Necton's site where it is now, it was selection number 2. Selection number 1, which was still Necton, was right on the edge of Dunham. And so, you know, that didn't work. It's moved to site 2. So we'll see what happens here. We could have this back 100 times yet. Okay, any further questions? So I can move. Oh, sorry, Councillor Plummer, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Can I ask, well, either the applicant or whoever, is this site being fenced in? It's going to be fenced in. Can I ask the next question? Is it going to be regularly supervised? Because my concern is that if you fence something like this in, and you do, I know you shouldn't, but if you get animals, deer or something like that in, is it going to be supervised? So I don't know if you can let them out, but, you know, keep an eye on something like that. And, oh, sorry, and one more question. Has the farmer or the farmers said whether they will graze, or is it not logical to graze under these things? Thank you.
I think it's if they're arable farmers or they're livestock farmers, I suppose the answer to that is, but I'll leave it to you, sir.
So the fencing is a stock-proof fencing. It's post and wire, very standard, up to 2 meters in height. We do incorporate mammal gates at regular intervals. Your point in terms of surveillance. So there are a number of fixed CCTV cameras mounted on posts, which look into the site and definitely don't look out of the site. Then there are usually motion sensors. So these things are kind of remotely surveilled at quite some detail. And so you asked another question and I've just forgotten what that was. Grazing, yes. So, solar farms are definitely suited for sheep grazing and sheep only. It doesn't really work for other animals. We own and operate 13 of our own solar farms, and over half of those have sheep grazing on it. So it's certainly something, it's definitely our preferred method of grass management. And those kind of details that, if we were to secure permission, we would look to actively put sheep on those fields.
Okay, thank you very much for that. No further questions, members? Okay, thank you. It's time for us to take a vote on this item. So item 9A, 3PL 2022-1215 in full format at Great Dunham. Your officer's recommendation is one of approval. Clerk, show of hands, please. 9, and those against, 1. Okay, this item is approved. Thank you very much. Well, obviously subject to various conditions, etc. I'm going to break for a coffee, which seems rather bizarre that we're that late. But if I could have members back at 5:02 so that we can continue with the rest of the agenda. Okay, thank you very much. Thank you for all your time, ladies and gentlemen.